The sun wasn't even up yet when I stood in my creaky kitchen, brushing my teeth with bottled water. The farm's tap gave one last pitiful groan before it choked and died. I froze, toothbrush in hand, the truth hitting me like a kick to the chest. Someone was stealing my water. This wasn't a leaky pipe or a cracked valve. My bill had doubled, my tank was bone dry, and at 6:30 a.m., I was already in my boots, stomping through frost-crusted dirt, cursing the HOA and whichever leech thought they could siphon off a working man's lifeline. My cows were restless, lowing like they knew something was wrong. The irrigation lines gurgled, gasping for water, and my morning coffee came from a jug of emergency rainwater I kept for wildfires. By noon, I'd ruled out every fault on my side. Pipes were solid. Tank was sealed. Every valve was perfect except one. Near the north pasture, a spigot sat disturbed, the dirt around it soft and freshly packed, like someone had been digging with a shovel. That spigot fed a buried line running under the old fence to the HOA's manicured neighborhood. I only used it for dry season irrigation, but now, a sick feeling twisted my gut. I tracked that line like a hunter stalking prey, crossing the boundary where my rugged fields met the polished suburbia ruled by Vanessa and her clique of clipboard-wielding minions. There, in a pristine rose bed, a brass tap gleamed in the sun, a coil of new hose dripping lazily. On her porch, Vanessa lounged, wide-brimmed hat tilted just so, sipping lemonade like she was the queen of plenty. She didn't flinch as I stepped onto her lawn, just flashed a smile as fake as a campaign ad. "Morning, neighbor," she chirped. "Like my new water feature?" "Where'd that line come from?" I asked, voice steady but sharp. She blinked, feigning confusion. "Oh, the landscaper installed it. Isn't it lovely? My roses are thriving." "That's my line," I said, stepping closer. "That's my water. You tapped it without permission." Her eyes narrowed, but the smirk stayed. "The HOA reviewed the boundaries." She started, but I cut her off. "My deed says that line's mine, laid in 57. Your HOA didn't exist until 92. Don't play dumb." She stood, lemonade forgotten, her voice icy. "You can't hoard resources. This community has needs." I walked away before I said something I'd regret, but my blood was boiling. She hadn't just trespassed or stolen, she acted like it was her birthright. That night, I checked the tank. Lower again. She was still at it. My cameras caught nothing too far from the barn. Vanessa was clever, waiting until I was out with the herd to bleed my water like a vampire. I gave her one last chance. Next morning, I knocked on her door and said, calm as stone, "Stop using my line." She slammed the door, muttering about reporting me for hostility. That was it. If she wanted water, she'd get a delivery she'd never forget. Behind the barn, under a padlocked tarp, sat my slurry tank, not compost, but liquid manure, the kind that could make your eyes water from 100 yards. I spent that night rerouting the line, gloves on, goggles tight, a grin creeping across my face. I cut the fresh water, redirected the underground pipe, and hooked her shiny tap to the manure tank. I rigged it so nothing would flow until she cranked it wide open, and when she did, the pressure would hit like a vengeful geyser. By dawn, the trap was set. I waited in the hayloft, binoculars in one hand, thermos of bitter rainwater coffee in the other. At 8 o'clock sharp, Vanessa strutted out, gardening gloves on, humming some chipper tune. She turned the tap. Her head tilted. She sniffed. Then she screamed. The hose bucked like a wild snake, spewing a torrent of brown sludge. It blasted her rose bed, splattered her shoes, her pants, her pristine white siding. She dropped the hose, stumbled, and tripped over a lawn gnome, landing hard in the grass. She stood, dripping, furious, glaring at the sky like it had betrayed her. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered brushing my teeth with bottled water, rationing coffee like a wartime widow, my cows parched while her roses bloomed. I didn't laugh until she stormed to her garage, grabbed a bucket, and tried to scoop the manure from her flower bed, as if she could erase the stench of her own greed. She didn't see me. Didn't know my new camera caught it all. But I knew one thing, Vanessa didn't quit. She'd double down, and I'd be ready. Next morning, my tank was full, my cows calm, and the sunrise was the sweetest I'd seen in weeks. Vanessa, though, was unraveling. Her shouts echoed through the neighborhood, rants about sabotage and illegal waste. She paced her yard like a general on a ruined battlefield, her wilted roses drooping like her pride. I stayed clear, letting her stew, watching her march down the street, red heels clicking like gunfire, knocking on doors to spew her VY Tim act. I chuckled, fed the pigs, patched the barn roof. Real work kept me grounded. By afternoon, an HOA notice was pinned to my gate, demanding an emergency inspection for a supposed biological hazard from my land. I tucked it in my pocket unfazed. That evening, I called my cousin, Liam, a property lawyer who lived for shredding overzealous HOAs. He laughed so hard he nearly choked, then sent me ironclad documents, my deed, water rights, and boundary records from my grandfather's handshake deal in the 50s. I locked the gate, added 2 more trail cameras, and slept easy, knowing Vanessa played dirty but I played smart. The next morning was too quiet. No shouting, no heels. I should have known she was plotting. At 10:30, a black SUV rolled into her driveway. A suit with a laminated badge stepped out, sniffing her hose, inspecting her ruined roses while she gestured wildly toward my land. An hour later, he knocked on my gate, calling himself an environmental specialist, and asking to inspect my equipment. I handed him a copy of my deed and said, polite but firm, "Court order or you're trespassing." He left, deflated. That night, Vanessa took to the neighborhood forum, my burner account catching every word. She wailed about deliberate contamination, begging for justice. Her cronies cooed sympathy, but others hesitated, some asking how she got the waterline. She slipped, claiming the HOA approved it for a beautification project. A lie. I had proof, footage of her landscaper digging, connecting the illegal tap, covering it with sod. I sent it all to Liam. By morning, he'd drafted a cease and desist letter with timestamps, screenshots, and a demand for compensation. Vanessa got the letter at noon. For 4 hours, silence. Then she stormed my gate with a local news crew in tow, accusing me of terrorism and compost warfare. The reporter looked pained as she ranted. I said, "No comment," handed him a flash drive with my EVY Denke, and walked away. That evening, the segment aired. My footage, her landscaper, her lies, my deed round her tantrum. Her face during the inter-VYEW was pure shock, expecting allies but getting humiliation. Next morning, HOA members crept to my porch, asking for deed copies, muttering about Vanessa's overreach. One shook my hand, whispering, "We didn't know she went that far." I sipped a cold beer that night, crickets humming, the manure tank sealed but ready. Vanessa wasn't done though. 3 days later, she struck again. The entire HOA bore 7 suits led by a guy named Greg, who once fined a neighbor for Christmas lights marched onto my land unannounced. I was fixing a saddle when Greg declared an emergency policy re-VYEW, claiming new bylaws allowed shared utility access for aesthetic maintenance. I asked what gave them rights to my land. He smirked, muttering about community spirit. I handed over my paperwork, deed, permits, a faded photo of my grandfather laying the pipe in 57. Their faces twitched as they read. Greg mumbled about legal re-VYEW and slunk off. That evening, an HOA letter arrived, vaguely claiming access to private utilities for landscaping emergencies. Liam laughed for a full minute, then helped me draft a response threatening a lawsuit and demanding reimbursement for stolen water and defamation. Vanessa's counter was absurd. She had a real estate pal claim my land fell under an old HOA covenant. I didn't flinch. Liam and I dug through county records, finding my property's agricultural exemption, notarized and airtight. We sent copies to the HOA, the news, and Vanessa. She raged online, accusing me of forging documents. No one bought it. Days later, new equipment arrived at her house. Contractors dug trenches, likely planning another tap. I called a utility buddy to install a backflow sensor and pressurized lock valve, wired to an alarm. 2 days later it blared. Cameras caught a guy in a blue uniform tampering with her spigot. He twisted the valve, triggering a hiss. He jumped back. Vanessa ran out yelling. He refused to try again and fled. At the next HOA meeting, Vanessa ranted about unauthorized usage. I stepped forward, handed out my EVY Denke, and played the tampering VY Dale. Her voice faltered, the room silent. Board members looked mortified. One suggested VY citing her committee role. She stormed out, door slamming. I updated my fence signs. No trespassing. No water. No excuses. The manure tank stayed ready. Days later, I saw trucks outside the HOA clubhouse. Vanessa, clipboard in hand, barked at 2 nervous workers loading hoses. That afternoon, my alarm screamed again. She'd hooked a pump to override my lock, thinking she'd outsmart me. I flipped the manual override. The manure line surged, the hose exploded, and a geyser of sludge drenched her lawn, her workers, and Vanessa herself as she tripped over a stone, screaming. Her backyard became a swamp, the stench unbearable. She'd forgotten her own garden party that evening, the HOA's annual showcase. Guests arrived dressed up, carrying dishes, only to gag at the smell. Tables were soaked, roses dead, chairs sinking in muck. Vanessa, stained despite a fresh outfit, tried to rally them, claiming a plumbing hiccup. A child cried, a dog cowered, and someone muttered this was the HOA's worst event ever. The same reporter showed up, filming her desperate podium speech, swatting flies. The clip went viral by midnight. HOA queen loses garden war. Memes flooded the internet. Next day, an anonymous email sent me HOA emails where Vanessa lied about the tap and called me a backward farmer too dumb for plumbing. I brought it all to the emergency HOA meeting. The room was packed. Vanessa spun her tale, but I laid out the EVY Denke, footage, logs, emails. Her face cycled red to pale. The crowd drowned her protests. The board stripped her of duties, censured her, and apologized to me. She fled, door rattling behind her. The neighborhood forum erupted screenshots, clips, even a worker offering to testify. Vanessa went silent. Days later, a lawyer's letter accused me of emotional distress and manure attacks. Liam grinned, saying it wouldn't stand. We compiled everything, footage, emails, news clips. In court, Vanessa played the VY Tim, scarf tight, fake tears flowing. Liam presented our case. The judge dismissed her claims, sanctioned her, and ordered her to pay fees. She left, heels echoing. 2 weeks later, for sale signs sprouted hers and 2 neighbors, fed up with her. One left me a note. Thanks for standing up. Vanessa's MOVYing truck vanished by noon. The HOA sent a formal apology, confirming my land's exemption. I declined their offer to fix my fence. I didn't want their money, just their memory. I capped the spigot, added a private use only sign, and moved the manure tank deeper into the barn. Life settled, but not quite the same. Neighbors dropped by with eggs, pie, goat milk, sharing how they tiptoed around Vanessa. Her chaos, as virile as that sludge, had oddly united us. One evening, I stood by my field, sun sinking, shadows stretching. The hose lay coiled clean. My tank was full, cows content, peace restored. I could have gone harder, but the best revenge wasn't ruin, it was truth, patience, and a well-timed manure tank. Vanessa thought she could rewrite the rules. She didn't count on me.